as Evelyn said, I'm a primary school teacher. I found out I was autistic nearly 3 years ago. And that began my journey of looking back on my experience as a school child, very vulnerable school child, primary school, secondary school, and college. And it gave me the opportunity to see why and understand why things were so difficult, because it wasn't an easy journey, as it is with many of our autistic children. I felt that suffering, and I felt lonely, and I didn't belong, and I didn't know why. And that whole sense of, why is this working for everybody else and not me, was a big part of my life. I was situationally mute, anxious, and suffered the trauma of school. So I think it's important to acknowledge that the journey of self-discovery is a long and painful one. And I don't think that we have the right to put the children in a position where, when they're older and they discover what's happening to them, that they have to endure that journey, because any of us, and many of us have and are going through that journey. It is very difficult, and we can make it, we can change it so that they don't have to do that. Off script already. So, yeah, basically, the statistics show us what I'm have just been talking about, and I'm going to just show a few here and try and get through these bits faster. But so 80% of autistics struggle with anxiety, 60% of autistics are affected by depression, and 30% meet the criteria for PTSD. That's only 3. I could have filled that page. Many, many more statistics like this, and we must do everything that we can to reduce these numbers. Actually getting good at this. So here I've just taken a few quotes. What do children say about school? Because a big theme of yesterday and a big theme today is going to be, listen to the autistic voice, listen to the children. They have the answers, not us. So this is taken from Square Pegs, fabulous book by Fran Morgan. Too many people, scary, pains in my stomach, worry for the next day when I come home, too loud, 11-year-old. Please, can I go to a school where I can be accepted for being different? 13-year-old. I don't want to be awake at night worrying about going to school. 13-year-old. Inside school, I felt trapped. I felt I couldn't be myself. 17-year-old. It's hard to read. This is very much in line with what we're hearing on a daily basis. And although each story is individual and personal, a common theme runs through them all. Pain, suffering, loneliness, not fitting in or being accepted, being misunderstood, not belonging. They think I'm odd, weird, and being bullied, overwhelmed, and traumatized. Their stories are devastating and heartbreaking. So let's examine why this is happening in many of our schools. Many, but not all, maybe most. And how we can make changes to ensure that autistic children and young people thrive in school and not merely survive, that they are nurtured and grow and develop autistically. So we're going to look at that struggle. I call it the school struggle. The severe, am I on the right one? Yay. The severe lack of adequate and up-to-date training for teachers is hugely concerning and problematic for autistic children and young people, leaving them vulnerable to the wrath of the medical model paradigm that views autistic children through a pathologizing lens and seeing them as a broken version of a neurotypical child. Falling outside of what is considered the superior brain type or normal way of being means that autistics can be perceived as inferior, lesser, wrong, and therefore need to be fixed to look, act, and feel less autistic and become a successful, acceptable, neurotypical version of themselves. Their way of being is often stigmatized, leading to prejudice and othering. Stereotyping can result in the autistic experience being overlooked and dismissed. Autistics may experience marginalization and suppression, and in fact, autistic individuals may face multiple layers of stigmatization due to the interplay of intersectionality. The one-size-fits-all curriculum system thrives on standardizing the brains of children, standardizing their ways of thinking and being, their ways of experiencing, sensing, feeling, and processing the world. Expectations and milestones and success are based on neuroconformative norms and completely fail to take natural variation into account. So when failing to recognize the autistic experience as a valid way of being human, We are setting autistic children and young people up to fail within the system before they even step inside the door. Unrecognised and unmet needs, feeling judged, invalidated and unseen leads to confusion, worry and anxiety. They do not feel safe being autistic. They desperately try to hide their authentic self and frantically watch others and observe others to mimic their successful way of being. They project a more acceptable version of themselves that covers up their autistic ways. This is masking, and it's an unconscious response to trauma. It's exhausting and damaging. It chips away at identity. In school, masking can look like many things: being situationally mute, acting out, messing, sitting quietly, going under the radar, suppressing stims, scripting, people-pleasing, shyness, and so much more. Navigating the busy sensory environment in schools can be a nightmare for children, and they tell us this all the time, every day. It's too loud, is what we're hearing so much. Hypersensitive sensory systems can mean visual, tactile, auditory, gustatory, and olfactory. I hope I said those words right. Maybe not. Stimuli can attack, bombard, and overwhelm the nervous system. Hyposensitive systems can crave additional vestibular and proprioceptive input in the form of movement, swinging, and deep pressure. Autistics may struggle with interoception and not recognize the need to eat, drink, or even go to the toilet. Alexithymia means they can struggle to recognize their feelings. This all makes school a very difficult place to be. For autistic children with PDA profile, school can be particularly challenging due to the overwhelming demands we place on them. Autistic children and young people's nervous system are in constant survival state, in the fight, flight, freeze, fawn, stress response, constantly scanning the environment for danger. It's exhausting hearing it, isn't it? Imagine listening to it. Or being it, feeling it, experiencing it. Shutdown, meltdown, and burnout become part of autistic children and young people's lives. Many schools run on strict behaviourist discipline policies with compliance and control at their centre. Many neurotypical behaviour expectations are in direct conflict with the autistic child's needs. When an autistic child is non-compliant, it is often assumed that they're being willfully disobedient, challenging, disrespectful, rude, cheeky, etc. Applied behavioural analysis, positive behaviour supports, reward charts, punishments, stickers are all used to extinguish behaviours and coax and train the autisticness out of children, to let the neurotypicalness in. These approaches fail to acknowledge behaviour as a sign of distress and a nervous system issue. More and more autistic children can't be in school. Can't, not won't. It's very emotional, isn't it? The number of children at home recovering from burnout is rising. Autistic children and young people's mental health is suffering, and suicide rates in our community are high, even with primary school children and secondary school children. We are at crisis point, and we need to act now. Today I want you to hear the voice of 14-year-old Naomi Gwynn, who has given me permission to read this. She is autistic and she could no longer be in school. And she writes, "What school taught me. You can only go in and out of a building if you're walking in a line. Lunch can only ever be eaten when a bell goes to say it's time. Social time is wasted time. You can only learn in class. You only need the bathroom if you have a toilet pass. You can only use the bathroom if you need a toilet pass. Adults are always right. Kids' opinion do not matter. Work must be done in silence. You get punished if you chatter. You are not allowed to be different, like robots all the same. You must wear what everyone else decides, even if it causes pain. You can only read at the level they tell you, no choosing a favourite again. Hot sunny days, you were stuck in classroom, but in winter left out in the rain. Star of the week was just random, regardless of how you tried. Disappointment was never allowed. You were told to be brave if you cried. Tests and grades were all that matters, always compared to one another. Wet towels solved everything. No need to be phoning your mother. Everyone's writing must be the same, with numbers all touching the line. No matter how much you were struggling, teachers would say you were just fine. School taught me never to question, never just to be me. Things are so much better now that I'm home. I'm happy, I'm learning, I'm free." I didn't write that, but it's beautiful and it's really hard to read, but it is the story of so many people. So, what do we need to do to ensure that autistics are free to be happy, to learn, and to be themselves in school? We need to make a shift, a really important shift. We need to shift from the damaging medical model paradigm and move to a trauma-informed, neuroaffirming paradigm that pays close attention to the autistic child's experience of the world rather than the should be. That's based on neuroconformative norms. We need to shift from seeing autism as something we can see based solely on behaviours to understanding what's happening on the inside, how it feels to be autistic. Inclusion and belonging, the important words. In my experience, the term inclusion within the education system is often equated with the idea of merely being present in the building. Sure, aren't they here? I personally prefer to use belonging along with inclusion, as it focuses on the person rather than the idea. It takes feeling and connection into account and not just presence. Belonging from an autistic perspective means being seen, heard, understood, accepted, trusted, valued and validated and loved as autistic. As a person who experiences, sees, feels, senses and processes the world differently, not wrong, and differently, not less. To belong means to be safe, to be yourself, to explore the world in a way that aligns with your natural curiosity and thinking patterns, your communication styles, your learning styles, which allows you to socialize in a way that is comfortable and rewarding for you, not those around you. True belonging allows you to be free from judgment, safe to take risks, to make mistakes, to question, to know, and to feel that your way of being is just perfect. To all school staff here and online, your classroom is likely to include many autistic individuals, formally or self-identifying, as well as those who are yet to discover their true neurotype. The goal is not to create a neuronormative environment with accommodations for autistics. Instead, the aim is to cultivate an environment that embraces and celebrates a diverse range of ways of being and doing things. So the big question, how do we do this? This is the third time this has come up, so I really think we need to know this one is important. That's the answer. We change the environment and not the child. Dr. Bearden's formula, autism plus environment equals outcome, highlights the critical role that environment plays in the lives of autistic children and young people in our schools. In a supportive environment, autistic individuals thrive, whereas in an unsupportive setting, they struggle. The more challenging the environment is for a child, the greater the need for individualized supports. So if it's not that challenging, they won't need as many individual supports. By creating inclusive and supportive environments and practices, we can reduce the need for those individual supports, allowing for authentic growth and well-being. I think we can all agree here today that big systemic changes are needed from government level within the education sector, no matter what country. I'm assuming people even from different countries, it's the same worldwide. We know we need to move away from a knowledge-based, rote learning, regurgitating one-size-fits-all curriculum. We know we need smaller class sizes and more support staff, SLTs, OTs and psychologists as part of the school community. We know inclusion training needs to be updated in our training colleges, and practicing teachers need to be retrained. But can we wait for all this to happen before we do our bit to change? No, we can't. Our autistic children and young people can't wait that long. It will be too late. But the good news is we can make changes in our schools and classrooms that can start to make a difference straight away. And Kieran spoke about that yesterday. What can we do now, here today? And very important message. To allow for authentic autistic development where strengths are seen and nurtured and differences accepted, spoken about and normalized. And this bit is huge, the spoken about and normalized. And I'm going to share a little bit about the journey of the school that I'm in. We're 3 years into our journey of changing how we see belonging. And there's so many positive changes, but one of the big ones is I'm trying not to look at a parent in the school right now because but it is that, it's just that whole idea of normalizing and speaking about different experiences, and moving, I want to say moving from whispering to talking out loud, but a lot of the whispering wasn't even happening. I mean, some parents felt they had to whisper talking about their child, and a lot of parents are telling us that they wouldn't even whisper on the school grounds. And we are certainly moving to a culture of celebration and openness and normalization. And I've got loads of tips, so I'll move on. Am I finished with that one? So, here today I ask you to open your mind to mind our artistics minds. And I ask you to start this journey of change with yourself. I recently heard somebody say, you don't learn from experience, you learn from reflecting on experiences. So perhaps reflection is a good place to start here with our journey towards belonging. And when I talk about a journey, I think it's important to say there's no destination with this. So you don't arrive at a point where we have this now. We are a school that is inclusive and we know everybody belongs, because that changes from day to day, and that will change with the children that you have in front of you. So it is a way of being that will change and will grow and develop, and a mindset. Back to the script. Ask yourself where you are with your perception of the autistic experience, and start with exploring your own internal biases. This really can be difficult to do, and I think personally it's one of the hardest elements of the journey for myself. It is a difficult one, but it really is so necessary. Ask yourself questions like, do I believe all neurotypicals do I believe all neurotypes are equal? Do I use pathologizing and stigmatizing language? Do I prioritize neurotypical perspectives and experience over those of autistics? There are many, many questions we can ask ourselves here. This is only a few. But I ask you here today, take the time to really see the truth in your answers. It is the time for critical thinking is here. Try and bring the questions and answers into your consciousness and really explore, because uncovering biases promotes greater understanding and acceptance of the autistic experience. Yesterday, somebody, when Kieran asked, what can we do now? Somebody talked about language. And I could do 35 minutes. I could have slide 35 minutes of this. These are only examples. The title is, people always say kids hear the words, but they actually feel them, and they feel them really deeply. And yeah, we can do this one. We can do this one straight away, because unfortunately many schools still use stigmatizing language when talking about autistics. Autistic children and young people hear and feel this language, and this is one we can change now. So instead of with autism or has autism, autistic. The vast majority of the autistic community prefer the term autistic. Some schools, but actually I think many schools, still use ASD or autism unit. No child should ever hear the word disordered. I can't get past that one. Used to describe them. The word unit can carry medicalized assumptions around how autistic people are educated, and they are quite often separate from the main building of the school. Soft names like shining stars, people think they're doing the right thing, has a very othering feeling about it, and the need to hide the fact that it's for autistic children. Please just streamline all names of classes in the whole school. Mr. such and such's class, Siobhan's class, whatever it is. High and low support needs avoids fixed categorizations that may not accurately represent an individual's experience and support needs at any given time. Also, can you imagine being called low functioning? Gets you, doesn't it? So, a few more that sometimes we don't think about. They are fixated, they are fascinated. Makes a difference, doesn't it? Is rigid and flexible, prefers consistency. I hate these next two. Away with the fairies. For the birds. That can be anything. Deep thinking, connecting, processing. In their own world. Who else's world can they be in? I think we would all rather come on this side. So, I'm going to share some of the experiences of our own school. They're only ideas, and we're still only learning. a lot very quickly. And a lot will depend on your own space and your own environment, but it's just about thinking and how we think and changing our mindset. I probably need to speak faster, don't I? So, attending to our nervous system. Safe environments for children and young people mean that their nervous systems can be free from threat, can mostly be regulated, allowing them to be free to engage, learn and develop, because they can't when they're dysregulated. Guiding children and young people to become aware of what is happening to their nervous system and how it responds to the world around them can empower them to be in more control and have a deeper understanding of personal triggers that overwhelm, as well as understanding the glimmers that bring joy and happiness and a sense of wonder and satisfaction. Guide them on a journey that allows them to tune into and understand their inner world through interoception awareness, empowering them to attend to their basic bodily, sensory, and emotional needs. Co-regulation strategies can be explored and practiced collaboratively to help balance and regulate the nervous system. Provide children and young people the language they need to explore and express what's happening within their systems. This will enable them to understand their experience better and seek help from others when it's needed. I just want to share a little story because I really was patting myself on the back thinking, I've really got this, and my kids can say regulated and dysregulated and overwhelm and talk about neurodiversity. And just last week in the class, a little boy got overwhelmed very, very quickly. It turns out there was a really loud noise that dysregulated him, and he let a roar out and ran into the toilet. And we talked about, oh, he must be dysregulated. And this fabulous little girl with hair down to her bum flicks her hair and says, I think you'll find that was a fight, flight, freeze response. She said, my mom told me all about it. And she proceeds at 7 years old to explain, using cavemen, what that meant. And there was complete silence in the room. And they got it. They really, really understood it. And I think we should never underestimate children's ability to understand and to use language. And it certainly encouraged me to do even better. So, that horrible sensory environment. Many autistic tells us that the sensory environment in schools is a nightmare. It's unbearable and can feel like a constant painful assault on the system. So let's look at how we can adapt the sensory environment to facilitate regulation. Do we need bells, alarms, and intercom systems and ticking clocks? Are there other possibilities? Can you imagine being in here today, this morning, and having 20 bells ring? It's horrendous. We don't need them. The kids will tell us when class is up. Many autistic individuals have heightened sensitivity to sound, including the ability to hear electricity. What may seem like a slight buzz to some can feel like a helicopter for those with sensitive sensory systems. Can we turn off appliances when not in use, or can we reduce their use? Providing ear defenders in every classroom, and lots of them, and permitting the use of in-ear buds, allowing children and young people to have greater control over sensory input. And I really don't mean that when we get a report in saying, identifying a child as autistic, that then we can say, you can have some ear defenders. They need to be available to all children at all times. Can we dim the lights? Can we cover them? Can we turn some of them off? Can we reduce visual clutter in our rooms and corridors and use neutral colours on display boards? Smells can hurt the system. They can cause imbalance and nausea. They can distract. Be aware of strong scents, perfumes, cleaning products. Can people have a choice of where they sit in the classroom to avoid smells that will dysregulate them? To sensitive systems, uniforms can feel like nails on the skin. Can we be flexible in our uniform policy? Flexible seating plans allow autistic children to choose where they can sit to reduce and avoid sensory input. For those who seek movement and pressure, flexible seating such as yoga balls, wobble stools, floor desks, bean bags can allow for movement when it's needed, and will avoid the need to seek it in ways that are perhaps not compatible with being in the classroom. Bear in mind that sitting quietly doesn't necessarily mean listening or learning. We are still being taught that in our teacher training colleges. We still see student teachers coming with the eyes on, hands. Yesterday, I thought I was doing really well, and I sat over the back corner here thinking, okay, I'm on the edge. and I'll be comfortable here. And after 20 minutes, I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't sit on a chair, and I found a spot down the back. I took my shoes off, put my knees up to my chin, had a fidget in each hand, and I heard every single word. Over here, I heard nothing. I was taking in everything in my environment around me. This does not mean listening. We can never tell if a child is listening, and we must trust them that the way they choose to listen means they're listening, because mostly they want to. Many people need to move or fidget to concentrate and learn. Allowing fidgets and doodling, I really mean the doodling one. It's amazing. Maybe some of you can spot on your little pads there. It did not distract you, I bet you. I bet you it made it easier for you to listen. Movement breaks can be of huge benefit, and these can be whole class or part of lessons designed to incorporate movement. However, some kids don't want to take part, and Katie talked about choice. We always give the children choice. Lining up can be really dysregulating. Are there ways around this? Can children walk a little ahead or behind the line? Can they come in a little earlier in the morning? Ask what preference they have, listen to them, and please believe them. Quiet spaces within the classroom and school can allow children to escape when they feel they are becoming overwhelmed by increased demands or busy environments and social interactions. Co-regulation strategies can be modeled and used when necessary. There are endless examples of these, but it can look like talking with somebody, walking with somebody, sitting quietly with somebody, listening to music, breathing, reading, blowing bubbles. Again, explore and ask. This one gets me every time. Allowing children to eat, drink, and use the toilet when they need to. Imagine we have to say that. Means that they can attend to their basic needs promptly, promoting comfort, well-being, and allows them to focus on learning. Because if you're bursting to go to the toilet, you are not going to hear a single thing. It acknowledges and respects their bodily autonomy and greatly reduces stress. Have exit plans in place so that children can safely leave stressful and overwhelming environments and retreat to a safe spot. Ask the children and young people and involve them in designing their own regulation toolkits. One of the first things we did as a school that was moving forward was ask about yard time. And the words that came up the most, we didn't just ask the autistic children, we asked everybody. We don't know all the autistic children, was torture. So often the yard or playground, for those who are not from Ireland, comes up as a major stress trigger for autistics. Is it possible to create quieter spaces? I asked the question, but yes, it is. On the yard, away from the hustle and bustles, having benches, seats, and tables, and allowing board games, books, cards, arts, etc., because it's a long list, offers alternative ways for children to engage and play that may be more comfortable and enjoyable, as well as facilitating various types of social interaction. At secondary school level, can the hall be used? I've heard of schools that open the gym and kids can do weights, and I don't know anything about that kind of stuff, but can children partake in more structured activities such as gardening, litter picking? The list is endless. Again, ask the kids. They will have and do have amazing ideas. They can see spaces and transform them into things that we never would have even imagined. Again, the hall assembly shows nightmare, absolute nightmare. The difference in being in this room yesterday and today with this was phenomenal for me, and I'm sure for many other people. Having access to ear defenders, fidgets, and flexible seating will mean hall and assembly times and shows, whatever is happening, will be more accessible. Can quieter areas at the backs and side be used? So often, it's so much more bearable if we can just go to the side or the back. Again, can assemblies and shows be live streamed to a classroom? We have started doing this, and it's absolutely phenomenal. We did it, the first time we did it was an Easter parade, that was a bonnet parade that was in the school. And we opened up a room and live streamed for children who just found it to be too overwhelming. Some chose to go there from the start, and everybody knew that it was available, that you could just go. And it really, really was, it was just so inclusive, because quite often we just say, oh, the kids can't go there, they can't be in the hall, they can't be in the yard, and we just don't give them any other options to be part of it. So there's so many ways that we can remove the stress and the triggers, but yet they can still partake in what's happening. With all of the above that we've talked about, I ask and listen to the autistic children and young people, allow for open and honest communication, and believe what they tell us. Adopt a mindset of constantly being curious. No one way will work for every autistic person, but together changes can be explored and adapted to suit individual needs. If we consider that communication is a process of exchanging information, ideas, thoughts, and feelings between individuals or groups, then we see that the spoken word is merely one way of communicating. AAC includes gestures, sign language, pictures, texting, spelling, written words, voice output devices, and we must provide non-speaking, minimally speaking, and inconsistently speaking children with unrestricted access to varied communication modes. All forms of communication should hold the same value, as the goal is communication and not speech. Presume competence regardless of a person's choice of communication mode, because non-speaking does not mean non-thinking, non-understanding, and non-feeling. Gestalt language processors learn chunks of language first, and it's vital that we engage with them in a meaningful way. I had never heard of Gestalt language processing until a year and a half ago. I'm teaching for 30 years. It's just mind-blowing, isn't it? Eye contact is not important and should never be insisted upon. Many autistics are direct and literal communicators and interpreters and use factual and to-the-point language. This can often be seen as problematic to non-direct communicators and can be interpreted as rude, cheeky, or confrontational. Very problematic in schools. I'm trying to think of examples, and it can be very hard, but I thought of one yesterday when I was trying to think of this. And imagine a child in school and doing something at the desk, and the teacher says, "Cut that out." And the autistic kid says, "But I don't have any scissors." We all know where this is going to go, don't we? I mean, that kid's never going to win that one. So it's so important that we're aware of that, because you're being cheeky really is possibly and probably just that they're being direct and using the communication that's natural to them. STIMs. Stimming is short for self-stimulatory behavior, and every single human being stims in its natural way to use the body to help relax, focus, soothe, and regulate. Repetitive behaviors calm anxiety and improve body awareness. Stimming is a form of communication and self-expression that can convey needs, preference, emotions, comfort, or discomfort. It can be a way of engaging with others and making social and emotional connections. We should never stop people stimming. And I get asked this question all the time, but what about when? But what about if? There's no but what abouts. Many autistics have processing delays. Give time, offer questions and text in written form if possible. Only ask a child to answer out if they volunteer to do so. During video time, subtitles can be very helpful. Visual timetables can help, and let children know in advance when you know that change is going to happen. Be aware of how we question. As teachers and staff, we tend to ask questions all of the time, bombard kids with questioning. Reduce questioning and replace it with declarative language can help with those who are demand avoidant. Fly through the double empathy, because I think we've heard that a few times. So when communication goes wrong, and it often does, as we have just heard, Damien Milton tells us that the double empathy problem suggests that when people with very different experiences of the world interact with one another, they struggle to empathize with each other. So we know that neurotypical to neurotypical communication and interaction works well. We know that autistic to autistic works even better. What does not work, and when the misunderstandings happen, is autistic to neurotypical or neurotypical to autistic. They are often a result of different communication styles, experiences, and perspectives. And who gets the blame, especially in schools? Almost always the autistic kids, almost always. But you said this, but you didn't, but you did. After lunch, we know the stories and we know the outcome. By promoting awareness, education, and open-mindedness, we can work together, bridging the communication gap that fosters better understanding between autistic and non-autistic individuals. Social skills. The myth. Huge myth. Autistics lack social skills. It is almost always the first thing that teachers and staff think of when they hear a child is autistic. Oh, they don't have autistic social skills. We will teach them. It is so widely believed within our school system, and many schools promote and prioritize playing, mixing, and socializing in a way that is completely unnatural to autistics. Many autistics form connections and build relationships through shared interests, structured activities, clubs, groups. Some will prefer one-on-one interactions and alone time that might be enjoyable and used to rest, reset, or to process. Challenging behaviour, otherwise known as that'll be the autism. Dr. Green suggests that children do well if they can. We've heard that already. If a child isn't doing well, something is obstructing their progress. Every child wants to do well, learn, develop and thrive. They don't aim to struggle and not do well. As educators, our role to connect and collaborate with our children to identify lagging skills. In other words, what is going on? What is happening underneath? Relationship-based approaches are key. They build trust, focus on strengths, regulation, connection and communication. They empower children and autonomy. Teach these. That's all I'll say about it. It teaches everybody about every neurotype, and then we don't have the problems. We teach the include in our school. It is absolutely fabulous, and it is making a difference. It's available as Gaeilge for anybody who's here today from Gaeilge schools. Representation, let them be seen in the books, in the stories, in the videos. Talk about people, have the chats, they will love it. I learned during our Neurodiversity Day last week that Messi, whether he is or isn't, is autistic and ADHD, and Emma Watson is ADHD. They have made a bigger difference in our school than I have, just knowing that. Listen to the voices, have meet-up opportunities, and celebrate autistic culture. The fear. I know it's frightening. I know it sounds like it's going to be chaotic and horrendous, but it's not. It's absolutely beautiful. When I did my very first awesome course, I've done about 400. It was a teacher training one, and Evelyn kept saying, meet the children where they are, meet the children where they are. And it took me a while to get my head around this, because as teachers, we are so conditioned to focus on goals and targets and should-bes and musts, that it can be so difficult to step outside that box and observe and learn and be present. I'm not going to be able to get through this. Be present with the person in front of us and meet them where they are. So to emphasize Evelyn's request, I want to share Sam and his dad's story. So Sam's dad says, years ago, the level of interaction I had with Sam was minimal. He would seem distant, uninterested in anything we tried to do. I lost track of the number of times I'd come home from work and feel completely ignored. It felt like he was in his own world most of the time. So I tried something different. I stopped trying to make Sam do what I thought he should be doing, wanting to be more like the other 5-year-olds I knew. Instead, I started to join him in whatever he was doing, free of any judgment, free of any expectations. If Sam was going around tapping on the radiators, I sat there with him tapping away. If he was running up and down, I ran up and down. If he was rocking from side to side, so did I. Over time, it started to make a difference. Instead of constantly trying to stop him from doing what he enjoyed, I was showing him that I enjoyed it too. And slowly a bond built between us. Sam also started to pay more attention to what I was doing, trusting me, and slowly but surely, his world started to open up too. His love of music began at that age and led to many dancing days. Joining Sam is probably the simplest, most impactful thing that I have done as his dad. It strengthened the bond between us. It helped me shift my attitude towards autism, what it meant for Sam, and completely changed my relationship for him. This is the big one. It turns out he was never really ignoring me, just waiting for me to join him. So let's join autistic children and young people where they are, and you can read that, because I can't.